Greetings and welcome to this episode of the Deal Flow Show. I'm JP Maroney, your host, along with Paul Nicolini, my co-host here at the Deal Flow Show in Harbor City Capital. Today we've got Matt Plooster from Bridgepoint Investment Banking, and it's good to have you on the show. Paul and Daniel had talked a little bit about you and your background, eager to find out how you got started, and that's kind of where I want to lead off, is find out how you got started in the investment banking or the capital markets, and then we have obviously some questions that we'd like to ask you about your deal flow process and things that you're working on today. But maybe take us back a little bit and talk about how you got started in the business.
Yeah, appreciate it. It's been a long and winding road, but I started my career on Wall Street 20 years ago. Typical analyst one. Started at Deutsche Bank, which was the second biggest bank in the world at the time. And I often tell this story that your priorities at 20 years old are quite different than your priorities at 40, and I'm sure later in life as well. But basically went into investment banking because it's the one thing 20 years ago you could make $100,000 right out of college at, and I didn't really even know what it was, but I knew that sounded exciting, and was kind of the 1%er job right back then as well. If you were kind of top of your class from a top 10 school, that's kind of what you aspired to do. Maybe now that's Silicon Valley or something, but back then that was the case, and I was a high achieving, overeager kid, and so that's how I got into investment banking. Not really with grand designs on, hey, I want to be a capital markets professional for the next 40 years. Turns out I really enjoy it. It's dynamic work. Good at it, and most importantly, think that it gives me real purpose and our firm real purpose every day to get up and do the work that we do. And so got into it purely because of the money. That's not why I get up today and go to work and build Bridgepoint, but that's the beginning of the story. Spent the first 10 years of my career, gentlemen, at Deutsche Bank and then at Morgan Stanley. Doing large bulge bracket transactions. I'm a yokel from a town of 300 or 400 people in Nebraska, and so working on Wall Street Journal stuff every day was a great experience and a great training ground, and certainly have utilized that experience today at Bridgepoint down market to do what we think is even more important work, and for even a higher calling.
So was it everything you thought? I mean, I know you went in, you said it was for the money. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. By the way, you said Silicon Valley. It's funny because obviously Elon Musk has moved to Texas now, and I saw that Larry Ellison, Oracle's moving their headquarters, or has moved their headquarters to Austin. So we may have to be saying Texas Silicon Valley.
Oil Valley?
Yeah, Silicon Oil Valley. There we go.
Here in the Midwest, we call it the Silicon Prairie.
There you go. Yeah.
There you go.
I think it was all that I thought it would be. I think the asterisk though that I missed was if you did the hourly wage, it didn't work out that well, right? Because we were working 100+ hours, and certainly this is back in the days where the hours were probably even more intense than they are today. But the rearview mirror, everything looks fun. I look back fondly on the experience. A lot of great relationships. Most importantly, investment banking and the capital markets really are an apprentice industry, right? You learn to do deals by doing deals, right. and you also learn how not to do deals, right, or what you don't want to do as well. And so, while the experience was challenging, I look back on it very fondly, very thankful for the opportunity. And but it was certainly an intense experience. I think I've said this on another podcast maybe, but I averaged 114 hours in the office my first year at a bulge bracket investment bank, which is all of the hours if you've done that. And so I think the younger guys at our firm now kind of roll their eyes when we start telling war stories about how hard we worked, right? Like we did with did with our parents, but great experience. I'm very thankful for it. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yeah, I was going to say, the hours aside, that's probably one of the better places to start because you're getting such a different perspective of it.
Well, and you mentioned the relationships. Were there any, if you think back, were there any role models, deal makers in that business early on that you were like, man, that's someone I need to attach myself and learn from?
Absolutely. And I would say that went both ways, right? People that you admired how they went about their business, whether it was skill set or more importantly, ethics, right? Integrity. But I think we also, Natasha's my wife. She's our COO as well. So we're a husband-wife leadership team and ownership team. But I think you also learn a lot about how you don't want to do things, right? From
Right.
seeing people and how they operate. But I had the first mentor I had turned out to be a very senior and accomplished banker. And he was brilliant, but more importantly, he was a very high integrity gentleman. And just seeing how he operated, right, a young guy out of college, where in a really kind of money first focused world, really always aspired to be like him. He was kind of always the guy that people really looked up to, not just because he was really smart, but also because he was of an unquestionable integrity and driven by the right things. And I also think he's one of those guys that kind of just got the joke, right? I mean, I think that some investment bankers think they're the most important person in the world, and certainly the work we do is very dynamic and important. But he also was a real person and a good person, and that said a lot to me as a 22-year-old coming out of college. Right? There were certainly other successful bankers who made a lot of money and got a lot of big deals done, but his ethics and integrity were something that have really stuck with me. We maintain a relationship to this day. I actually did a podcast maybe a year ago, and I referenced him as well, and it was neat. I texted him after and said, "Hey, forward to the 920 mark. That's you I'm talking about." So I won't name him because there's lots of certainly good friends and mentors that I've had along the way, but he's always stuck out in my mind, mostly because of integrity, how he carried himself, and always did the right thing, even in tough situations, which you don't always see, particularly on deals, right, with big dollar signs in front of them. And then I would say on the flip side, there were certainly people who were effective, but cut corners. And I think we learned a lot about who we wanted to be, what we wanted Bridgepoint to be, also from people that we saw doing it in a way that we thought could be done better and with a different level of core values. And so, your experiences really inform you, and they certainly have informed us on how we want to carry ourselves, how we want to define our culture and our company. And quite frankly, we're a big part of why we founded Bridgepoint 10, 11 years ago now.
Well, tell us a little bit more about Bridgepoint, the size of the company, and what kind of deals you guys get involved in, if you would.
Yeah, sure. So Bridgepoint Investment Banking is a middle market boutique investment bank. Founded the firm 11 years ago, I guess now. True entrepreneurial story. I had mentioned that I had started my career at Deutsche Bank. Deutsche Bank was 82,000 bankers at the time. My wife and I, we met working at Deutsche Bank. She was a Deutsche banker as well, and then worked at a private equity firm in Chicago. We moved back to Nebraska, a very non-investment bank, non-private equity place, 11 years ago. And even though we're bankers and do deals, this is our own very humble entrepreneurial story and deal. And we've got nice offices now and nice things. But we had an analyst down last month for dinner with his wife, and I said, "Here, jump in the car. I want to go show you the first Bridgepoint office." And it was the right garage door on our first house. And I often joke that I went from an 82,000 person number 2 bank in the world to a home office that was in a garage about 10 feet from the trash cans. And so true entrepreneurial story. We weren't trust fund babies, didn't have a big pile of cash other than kind of what we'd made on Wall Street, and reinvested that in building our own firm that we thought was needed in a place that we thought it was needed for people that we thought needed the service. And so really just started in home office, 2 guys. Fast forward to today, we've been very fortunate and blessed. We're 20 to 25 bankers and people working mostly out of the Midwest. Headquartered in Lincoln and Omaha, Nebraska. Recently started an office in Denver, have an office in Des Moines, have an office in Chicago, spend a lot of time in that market. But even though we're in the Midwest, in those markets, it's truly a national practice, even do a fair amount of cross-border work, really focused on providing full service investment banking, which we don't really see done well at this end of the market. We see it done really well by all the big banks that we used to work at on Wall Street, right? If you're a big sponsor-owned company or publicly owned company, publicly traded company, you've got access to all those capital structure solutions and capital market solutions. Really, as you come down market, we saw kind of brokers and, hey, let me know when you want me to put you on your website and sell you, but really not the not the suite of solutions across the capital structure and capital markets that, if our dad owned a $100 million company or a $50 million company, the options that we would want them to have available to them. And so really set up the firm because we thought there was a real need at that end of the market for those same solutions. And we've built it through close a deal, hire another good banker, do the right thing. People come back to you, not really sexy stuff, but really important stuff around core values, around integrity, honesty, tenacity. And so that's been really fun. Some of those characteristics, unfortunately, in our industry are defining characteristics. And there are a lot of good people in investment banking that have kind of come, particularly the last 2 or 3 years, to our platform because they want to do important work. They want to stay in the capital markets and investment banking, but they want to do it with integrity. They want to do it with other people they believe in that are driven by the right things as well. And so Bridgepoint is, that's a long way of saying boutique investment bank, really focused on both capital raising throughout the capital structure as well as M&A work. And we mean that we're at least 50%, if not more, at any given time on the capital market side of the business. And 20 bankers, really spend all of our time on deals of, call it 20 to 200, $250 million. I think last year our average transaction was somewhere between $50 and $60 million. And so really a lot in the $20 to $100 million space. Those are folks that we don't find get service, obviously, from our old employers, and that we can really move the needle for in our solutions and the service that we can provide. And, fast forward 20 years in our career, that is really what it's about for us, is what do we get up in the morning to do? Who do we get up in the morning to help? And that's been a lot of fun. Quite frankly, it's been more fun than doing, $5 billion on average deals where you got 50 bankers. And, if you fell over dead, there'd be another guy in your chair in about 20 minutes, right? These are much more kind of one shot at goal family stories. And, that's really exciting, and we think we can make a real difference for folks.
I was going to ask, is this both private and public transactions?
It is. It's mostly private company transactions. We've got a couple public company clients. We find generally that public companies have access to good advice and capital market solutions. So mostly our focus is on private companies, on founder, entrepreneur, family-owned companies versus sponsor-owned companies. We think it's important not to be conflicted, so we generally work for non-sponsored companies and like to beat up sponsors and the folks in New York and Chicago with the big checkbooks on behalf of real companies and real entrepreneurial stories.
You mentioned you felt like it was an underserved area of the market. What do you think it is that sets y'all apart in terms of how you approach what you do?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think the first thing is really the full suite of solutions. And so if a corporate attorney calls us and says, hey, Matt, Bridgepoint, we've got this $50 million company that wants to sell, we take a lot of pride in not just educating them on what the sell side process looks like. Of course we do that, right? That's what good bankers do. We also take a lot of pride in backing up and saying, okay, are you saying you actually want to sell? And by the way, did you know about these other options for liquidity, monetization, as well as growth, et cetera? So really bringing to bear the full suite of solutions for company owners and for boards and management teams, and not just, hey, let us tell you why your company's worth another half turn of EBITDA and why we've got more tombstones, right? For us, that's fairly commoditized work. We're big on education and bringing to bear solutions to private companies that they probably didn't know existed before. Most private companies have kind of a commercial banking relationship, right? The bank tells them how much money they can get at 4%. And oh, by the way, someday they're going to push the red button and sell their company. We think it's really exciting to educate and bring to bear solutions on the in-between as well that can move the needle on growth, access to capital, and access to liquidity, maybe without having to give somebody else the keys to your third generation family company. So I think that's the biggest thing, is really just with purpose. It's not just on our website, because most investment bank websites say they do all those things, where really most boutique investment banks really just sell companies. For us, that's maybe 25 to 50% of our work. We are very intentional about, we don't let our process drive what the outcome should be. We let companies and owners and their priorities and needs and wants drive what the solutions should be. We can bring to bear all those transactions, and we love showing them at the outset what those transactions look like, what's available, what it would mean for them. And so it's very solution-based selling versus I'm the best trained chimpanzee with the best sell side process.
Something that I've often thought about, and when people have as many transactions as y'all do in a given year and then over a period of time, is there a way to capture the combined knowledge of all of those years when you have founders exiting like that? Do y'all do anything? I've asked this of other bankers and people involved in the process in private equity and things like that. Is there any kind of a process y'all have created, or are you doing anything to capture that knowledge and the years of experience, or to leverage it with other companies that you're involved with, perhaps advisory or board seats or whatever? Yeah, it's kind of an open-ended question, but it's something that I've often wondered about. It just seems like latent opportunity and missed opportunity that's left there.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I think in investment banking and capital markets, it's kind of, people that truly do sell side work, they basically get paid to fire their clients, right? Get a deal done and, send me a note from the beach or the golf course, right? I think that is part of the beauty of the full service business, right? So we're not just selling companies. In fact, a lot of our clients really we've become a part of their business. So I'll give you an example. We, over the last 3 or 4 years, there's an IT services company, a nice company, $50 to $100 million. They came to us, I want to say maybe 6 years ago, and it was true entrepreneurial story. Hey, I need a new banking relationship. My hair's on fire. I need to make payroll, right? So we started with just a commercial banking deal. The owner then said, hey, this is my life's work. I don't want to sell it, but I have, I'm like most owners. I don't have any personal liquidity. I've got this gray thing that's a liquid on my PFS that really I can't invest, right? And it could go to nothing overnight. We did a dividend recap for them and also brought in some growth capital to allow them to keep their company and achieve liquidity. We then advised them on actually a cross-border acquisition where we helped them buy something. And now we're in process of helping them actually do a majority recap and full monetization. And over that period, we've become a part of their business, right? Not just the guys over here that did one transaction for us. And I think that's consistent with most of our relationships, very, very trusted relationships, and become a part of their business and their strategic plan, their board conversation, if you will. We also quite frequently during deals and even before deals, we maintain good relationships and contacts with our clients and ex-clients. And we'll actually, to your point, if there's an issue that's operational, or how do I tell my people about this? Or, but by the way, can I talk to 3 of your folks that had to notify their people, right? How did that go? We maintain that dialogue closely and often put them directly in contact with our clients or prospects to help them, because it's one thing for an investment banker to blabber to them about how they've seen 100 go. It's another thing to allow them to talk to 3 or 4 or 5 other owners who have been through it themselves and give them some peace about it and some tribal knowledge about it. So we're big believers in relationship and experience. And I think the other way we do that is, I think you see a lot of investment banks that they might carry the same business cards, but they're really pods of people, right? Whether it's a sector group or a product group, et cetera. Collaboration is quite frankly a reason that people join. And so when you hire our firm, we're big believers that, yeah, you might have a deal team of 3 or 4 or 5 bankers, but you're really getting the full firm, right? And so we're having standard, actually twice a week calls, reviewing all the deals. Hey, even though I'm not the MD on that deal, I've got an experience or a contact. How do I help you on this deal? And most importantly, that's driven by how do we help our clients win and achieve the best outcomes they can. And it's not a whose deal is it conversation. It's a how do we collectively as 20 some people with, to your point, a couple hundred deals and all these relationships help our clients win. And we don't keep score of whose deal that is. It's one team and one client. And if it's good for one client, it's good for everybody at the firm. And we think that we press that really hard because it's definitely something that we didn't see on Wall Street, the collaboration, right? Everybody's worried about their P&L for the year and then it's on to the next year. And I think that's at the detriment of clients, to your point, and companies. And more collaboration and more experience around the table is good for clients, and we really push it.
I'd like to talk about your deal process in just a moment, but if you're watching or listening to this episode of the Deal Flow Show, you can go to our website, thedealflowshow.com, and get access to our archives, all of our past episodes, as well as subscribe and follow us and get access to future episodes. And by the way, while you're there, if you think you know of a great guest for the show, you can recommend a guest to us there on the website. So what I'd like to do is come back, Matt, and ask it's kind of a two-part question. Number one, when you're going into a brand new deal, folks that you haven't worked with before, do you have kind of a toolbox or a process that you go through? And I'm curious as to how much of that developed early on by modeling and seeing how other folks did deals when you came into the business, and how much of that has come about over your 11-year entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, great question. And I think the reality is it's ongoing, continuous improvement and excellence as to process and what works and what helps people. And so obviously learned a lot, right, in doing $40-some billion of transactions and seeing a lot of deals. But I would say our process has only improved from there, and very, very intentionally. And so every deal, every rep is better, right? And we'd say, hey, this worked really well. Let's share that with the team. Let's make sure that that's in our process. The client really appreciated that. And really a lot of it is driven by the client. We're big believers in exit interviews for our clients, right? And seeking feedback on what you wish was better, what went well, et cetera. That's something that I didn't see early in my career. And quite frankly, I think a lot of bankers probably have big egos and don't want to hear about what didn't go well. But we think it's really important. Our clients are why we get up in the morning, to make differences for real companies in the middle market. And so we think it's important to ask them, hey, these 5 things were awesome. I love you guys, right? But I really wish the attorney process went different. Or I wish that somebody would have given me a list and said, hey, when you go announce the sale or the recap to your team, here are some things to say and not say, right? And so certainly over the last 11 years, that's really developed. And we've incorporated a lot of those things from exit interviews and best practices from deals. We think that's important. And I have no doubt over the next 10 years, that'll only continue, right? One of our core values we talk about is continuous improvement and continuous excellence. And so we're never satisfied that, hey, our process is perfect, because it's not, and it can always get better. And if we learn something on one of the 20 deals we're doing right now that would be good across the other 19, we're going to implement it like that, because if it's good for our clients, it's good for a process, and we want to operate with excellence and serve people to the best of our abilities. And so it continues to grow, it continues to morph. It's a living, breathing thing. I would say about our process, the most important thing to get right is upfront to really drill into what are the goals, what are the priorities, what are the needs, wants of these private companies, which sometimes is really hard to pry out, right? These are uncomfortable conversations about desires for liquidity, et cetera, that maybe they're used to kind of towing the company line and incenting their people and rallying the troops. But it's really important to get right and to know what they want to accomplish. And sometimes that seems like an easy thing, but it might be a couple conversations. We start every kind of organizational meeting with, even though we talk about it a lot during pitches, with a goals and priorities page. Let's talk through the nitty gritty of how deals go. Let's talk about what type of deal, what type of structure you want to accomplish. And more importantly, qualitatively, what do you want this deal to accomplish for you, your family, and your company? And that's very soft, but it's probably the most important page in the book, right? Anybody can put together a Gantt chart on a timeline or a funder list. But those, if those things aren't oriented towards what the client wants in the first place, that's, it's a fool's errand, right? And so very hyper focused on what companies want, not on what we bring to the table, right? We can bring those options to bear. And as I mentioned, that's why the biggest differentiator probably is the true full service offering across the capital structure, because we're not beholden to any, we don't want the answer to be C, right? Quite frankly, we don't care. We compare the capital markets to what those goals and priorities and wants and needs are. And we think we experience it. That's different in the capital markets, particularly at this end of the market. And there's a real need for it, which is why we founded the firm.
So what you're saying is you ask your clients what they want, and you try to build something that solves their real problems in a way that they'd like it solved. That's novel. No, but it's think about that. How many businesses out there try to make everybody fit inside of a box?
Right.
And then they wonder why they're not growing and doing well. I did have a question. I know you've got a question, but I did have a question. In that 11 years that y'all have been growing from you and your wife starting in the garage, what was the trajectory to 20-ish bankers and 25-ish people? Was it like this and then it's really grown over the last few years, or has it just been steady, or?
It's been fairly steady. It's been, have a good year, hire a couple more good people. It's like anything, I think, in building a business. The first one's the hardest and the reps get easier, right? As you build credibility and a track record and people want to join your team. And, now when we go to interview MDs, we're running a process. We just brought on 2 MDs and a director. And we hired, we interviewed a bunch of JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Citigroup type folks. We weren't interviewing those people 5 years ago, right? We were kind of begging people that maybe were non-traditional to join the team. And so certainly I think just by nature of law of small numbers, maybe the growth was more 5 years ago, but we're adding incrementally more bodies, I would say, per year now. But it's been pretty, I would say 5 years ago, we were 10 people, right? So we've doubled kind of in that time period, maybe a little bit more. We've had years where we've doubled, and last year we added 3 or 4 people. So maybe that was 20% growth. So it's been pretty steady. We've grown every year. For us, it's really about finding the right people and people that we need to do better work. And that, the people business is lumpy. It's not an objective of, hey, let's hire 5 people this year. If we find 5 of the perfect people, we'll hire them. And if we find zero, we won't hire any, right? We can't compromise on that. But it has been steady growth, although law of small numbers has been choppy.
Nice. Matt, what are some of the deal breakers for you when you're taking on a client? You spoke of a few before, but give us a little example of what some of the red flags or deal breakers are for you.
The biggest thing for us is integrity. We talk a lot about, are they good people, right? Do we want to get up and work for them? And are they, a big part of that is, what are they going to do with the capital we bring to bear, right? Is there going to be a positive impact, et cetera? Integrity for us is a non-negotiable. And so while our clients often reference check, we do the same thing, right? We're not Deutsche Bank anymore. We're not doing a couple hundred transactions a year. We're doing, 10 to 25 transactions a year. And, if we're going to work thousands of hours for somebody, we want to work for good people that we can really help. And the second part of that is people that will take advice, that there is trust, right? The trusted advisor role, quite frankly, is everything to us. The economics are kind of the outcome. And so if they're good people that trust us and we trust them and will take advice and that we can really help, to us, that's the most important thing. I think we also are very intellectually honest and think everyone should be about, are we the best people to help somebody? And often it might not be because there's not a deal there, but we might not be best suited for it. And I think as you grow, right, becoming more disciplined about saying no when you're not right or perfect for somebody and convicted that you're the right advisor for them is really important. And I think in investment banking, there's kind of always the draw to, well, more deals are better, right? And I don't think that's necessarily the case. We want to work on the right deals where we can really make a difference, move the needle for people, and all be high-fiving at the closing table saying, hey, this was a great transaction for everybody involved. That's really what we get up in the morning to do, and want to work for good people that trust us, that we can, really move the needle for. Those are the most important things, the soft things.
To that point as well, you said working with the right people. Is there any industries or areas that you guys as a company stay away from?
We have 5 focus sectors. So maybe I'll start there because it's more about what we do than what we don't do. Industrials and transportation. I was a vehicular transportation banker most of my career. Lee Merritt is our managing director who leads up that practice. Really good relationships, great track record of capital raising and M&A work across the spectrum there. Gary Grote is a managing director who leads our healthcare investment banking practice and a dedicated team under him. Within the industrials vertical, Mike Anderson's our lead on the manufacturing side. Brian Wallace is our lead on the industrial services side. So broadly speaking, industrials and transportation, 1, healthcare, 2, business and IT services. Chad Gardner leads that practice. We've hired 3 senior folks in that vertical recently. And then consumer would be fourth. Brian Walsh spends most of his time there. And then Nick Orr's the managing director we brought on in our Denver office and as our TMT lead. So those would be our 5 sectors. And within all those, we do M&A and capital raising work and leverage finance work. And we also do, related to that, do a fair amount of specialty finance work. So raising capital for other funders, lenders, et cetera, kind of falls within all of those buckets. So those would be our 5 sectors. We traditionally have not done any oil and gas, have not done a lot of project finance type work, although we've got a couple great stories around those sectors recently there. But if it's niche-y or, sector really matters and it's not one of those sectors, particularly on the M&A side, maybe strategic connectivity, we'll be the first to say, hey, it's not right for us. Here's some friends of ours who spend all their time in that space. That's who you need to talk to. We call it the dad factor. So if it was your dad's company or you were on your dad's board, what's the advice you'd give him? And firm-wide, that better be the advice that all of our people are giving, right? In other words, are you giving the right advice? Or are you giving the fee advice? And we demand firm-wide that we give the right advice, the dad factor advice, if you will, and think that's really important. And unfortunately, to your point, simple but different.
So you're in the Midwest, but what is something, we ask some of our guests this question, we forget sometimes.
Yeah.
What is something about you, Matt, that people professionally would normally know about you?
Probably the only investment bank founded on a gravel road outside of a town of 300 people that not only doesn't have any stoplights, but doesn't have a paved main street. That would be something. So Malcolm, Nebraska is my hometown. I go by the 2000 census because it's in my favor on the small town argument, but 372 people. And when we play the small town game, which we like to do a lot internally, people always usually talk about how many stoplights do you have? Well, not only do we not have any stoplights, we also don't have a paved main street. It's gravel. So that usually wins a small town game.
Fair enough. As folks listen to this show, what sort of people would you like to hear from, and what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Absolutely. Thanks for the question. Obviously, company owners who might be thinking through growth, access to capital, liquidity, buying something, just what their options are, quite frankly. We love to educate and bring options to bear and make sure people know. Obviously, other advisors or capital providers, right, who might have transactions that we could help on or help one another on or refer transactions to or help people together. And so those would be the groups. The easiest way to get in contact with us or learn more about us would be our website. Our website is www.bridgepointib.com. IB is in investment banking, bridgepointib.com. And all of our contact information is there, as well as kind of actually some pretty helpful literature on education as well on the capital markets and the various sectors that we work in.
Fantastic. Matt Plooster, Bridgepoint Investment Banking. Great to have you on the show all the way from Nebraska and the metropolis that you live in. You said there's no stoplights. Is it a stop sign? Is it a yield?
Oh yeah, we've got a couple stop signs. They might have BBs in them, but we've got a couple stop signs.
So funny story. My wife is from a little bitty town in northwest Louisiana, and you get there by way of Marshall, Texas. The first time I went to see her at her house, because we had met in another city, first time I went to see her, she's telling me, you get on this highway, you're going down this highway, when you come to the flashing red light, you turn right, okay? So I'm driving, I end up in some other town. Come to find out, from her direction, it's a flashing red light. From the direction I was coming, it's flashing yellow. So that's what you call country directions right there.
Amen.
But good to have you on the show, Matt. Hope we can get together again soon. We've got an event coming up in the third quarter, early fourth quarter of next year called the Deal Flow Expo, and love to have you participate in that and be a part of that, and maybe bring some of the companies that you're working with and some of your team to the event so that we can meet y'all in person. On behalf of Mr. Paul Nicolini, myself, JP Maroney, the Harbor City team, the Deal Flow Show team, you are listening to the Deal Flow Show. You can get access to our previous episodes. Subscribe and follow us. You can get access to us on nearly every audio and video platform out there, podcasting, by going to thedealflowshow.com. If you think you know of a good guest or you think you might be a good guest, you can make that recommendation on the website as well. Matt, good to have you on. Paul, we'll talk to you guys again
Thanks,
very
Matt.
very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
For more episodes, visit thedealflowshow.com and subscribe.